Hello again, this is the course of computer programming, and we are going to continue the lesson about object-oriented programming. So we already learned about the classes and fields, we learned about the behavior method, and we are going to learn about the constructor. So let's jump to the section about the constructor. So last time you already learned about the how to do the method with the accessor and mutator. Okay, so we have this example, and let's see what is constructor. So the word construct means you want to create, you want to initialize. Okay, so in some programming language they mention as initialize. In Java we call it constructor, to construct. Okay, now let's see. You have the Java class, what we call point, and whenever you want to create a point, yeah, you will do like point p equals to new point. Yeah, you already learned about the scanner. Scanner is a Java class, and you learn about the other classes. Okay, now we are making our own Java class, which is point, and p is the object. Okay, so we have one p, this is the object, and whenever you have an object, yeah, we already learned that this kind of object can be regarded as a table. So if you have the data x equals to 3 and then y equals to 8, then yeah, this is fine because you need to define the value for a variable. This is x and y. However, when you do it this kind of way, you can see we need 3 lines. Okay, we need 3 lines. It means whenever you create a new point, then you will have 3 lines. Another point, you will have another 3 lines. Another point, you will have 3 lines. So if you have 4 points, whatever, you will need 12 lines. Okay, you need 12 lines. So it will be so tedious. Okay, tedious because you will do a lot of definition. Now, how if we just make only one line? If you have the class point, and then I want to create a p, which is a point, and yeah, let's just define with the parameter. So the parameter, yeah, will be 3 and 8. So the 3 express the x, and then 8 express the y. That is better. Okay, now how can we do this one in Java? So we can do this one with what we call as the constructor. So this is the constructor. The constructor should have the name equal to the class name. Okay, so you can see the constructor have the same name with the class name, but there will be nothing here. So you just define public. Public means any other Java class can access this constructor. So if you still remember, when it is a method, you need to define whether it is void or any data type to indicate that it is an instance method. But if there is no type, like you mentioned void, then it is a method with no return value. When you define class, so it means it is a Java class. So this Java class means the Java file name. But whenever you want to create a constructor, so you can just use the Java class name without anything. Okay, so there is nothing in this space. So I would like to say that the point with 2 parameters, which is the x and y, it will be the value. So this will be the value for x, and this is the value for y. And then we want to use this value to be the value of x. So x is this one. Okay, and then we want to have the initial y. This is the initial y as the value to the y. So y is this data members. Okay. So the constructor means we want to initialize the state of new object. Whenever you define the constructor, so you need to define the type. So the type actually is the Java class. Okay, so this should be the Java class, because you don't need to define the void. You don't need to define the data type. Okay, so you just put the Java class as the type, and then yeah, you can put any statement. And don't forget that you need to also define the parameters. Sometimes you need parameters, but you may not define the parameter. Yeah, it depends on you. So it will run when the client use the new keyword. So when you use like point new, something like this one, point new, then when you do this point, when you do the new, then it will run the constructor. Does not specify a return type. Okay, so it will not give you any return type. It implicitly returns the new object being created. And if the class has no constructor, so Java gives its default constructor. So whenever you create an object with no constructor, then there will be the default, and the default would likely to give the basic value or the default value, like the integer will be 0. Okay, and the string, it will be null. So what happens if I call this constructor? Okay, so you have the point class, and then I have p1, and then I have a new Java class, and there are two parameters, 7 and 2. Then when you do something with the p1, okay, p1 is the new object. It means the initial value here, it will be 7, and the initial value here will be y, and the variable, the value of initial x will be assigned to x, the value of initial y will be assigned to y. Okay, so that's the way to read this one. So let's see, we have the client code version 3. So let's see point main 3. So if you take a look on this, you can see there are some errors. Okay, point main 3. Okay, there are errors. Why? Okay, if you understand the concept of the parameters, okay, you will notice that, okay, this error because of, you can see here, create constructor point integer. So the first recommendation will be remove the argument. So it means that you need to remove this one. If you remove this one, okay, then yeah, the error disappear. But I want to put the parameter. So let's see the second option, let the create constructor point. So if you click this one, yeah, it will directly create a constructor. So this is the constructor, and it consists of two variables, which is I and j. So if you check on this, okay, you will have the 5, 2, and then yeah, the output will be 5, 2 and 4, 3. So let's see, after you have this one, as I mentioned in the previous example, you can just say, like, say this is the initial x and this is the initial y, and then let me delete this one. So the x will equal to the initial x, and then y equal to the initial y. Okay, so after you have those, and the error message disappear. Of course, there will be another error with the other Java code like this one. Yeah, later you will see how to fix this one. So when you have this point with two parameters, then you can run this code because there is no error. Then, okay, 5243, what is exception? Okay, I have to translate. So that's why the value has been translated. So using this way, you can see that the comment or the statements is less than what you already saw on the previous example. So when we have this, you need to remember, okay? You need to remember that when you type void, it will be errors, okay? So the constructor is only using the, yeah, that's right, using the Java class name. If you use void in this case, then it will be error. You cannot run your Java file. So this is not constructor. Okay. Oops. This is not constructor, but it is a method. And the other thing that you need to know is when you create the constructor, be careful to use the local variables. So you can have the x equals to initial y and y to the initial y, but don't use the data type. Okay. So if you define like this one, so it will declare the local variables. So the local variable means, if you still remember the scope of local variables, this local variable will be valid only in the method. Oh, sorry, this is not method, but it is a constructor. So if you define like this one, then you can access the x and the y in the constructor. So the value will remain 0. Let me show you. So I have this one, and let's see. You can see the blue color means that this x refers to the variable that you already have. And if you say like this one, integer x, integer y, so you can see the color now becomes black. Okay? Black means it is a local variable. So when you run this, you can see that the result will be 0. Okay, why it happens like this one? Yeah, because you cannot access the data members. Here is x is the data member, and you define the new variable. So that's why the scope of the variable is important. If it is local, then you cannot access, you cannot give the value to the global variable. Okay. How if we want to have multiple constructors? Multiple constructors means you have the constructor more than one. So a class can have multiple constructors, and each one must accept the unique set of parameters. Okay. Remember, this is the key point. A unique set of parameters. So when a constructor point objects that accept no parameters, it will initialize the point to the origin 0.0. Yeah, you can use like this one. So you can just define one time, and every time you have the constructor with the value is 0 and 0, then you can access this one. So I can just put it on the code. If you see this one, the point main still has error because I do not know what happened to the Java with no parameter. So I can define this with the things here. You want to copy and paste. So you can put here. Now you can see on this outline, okay, on the right part, you can see there are two data members, x int, y is int, and then point. So there's class, this is C, okay? C means constructor. And you have another point, it is also a constructor, but there are difference because the first has 2 parameters and the other has no parameter, okay? And if you save this, okay, please don't forget to save, okay? Save is the control S. So the point main will be fine. So there is no error. When you want to access, okay, when you want to access the object, okay, you may have issues with this because the P is an object and you cannot print P. So you need to define what do you want to print. So are you going to print the data members or you are going to print another thing? Okay? But yeah, in this case, you want to print the data members. So what we need to do is px, py, okay? And this p is just a string. So p.x means I want to access the value x on the object p, and I want to access the value y on the object p. Okay, so the dot represent something, the properties of the object. Now I would like to show you if I do not want to use this kind of mechanism p.x, p.y, but I'm just using p and it will show 10.7. How? So we will do with the toString method. The toString method means I want to show the result, and the result will be converted into string. So let's suppose if I have point P1 and the new point is 7.2, and if I want to print P1, then yeah, it will be the object directly. It will show you the value 7 and 2. But if yeah, in some other way, you can just write dot toString. So this toString is to show the value in a string format. So if you still remember in the previous section, I guess you learned about the arrays, okay? Arrays toString. So every class has a toString, even if it is in your code. By the default, the class name and it is a hex base 16 number. I don't want to discuss that one. So the things now, you need to define the toString. So what is the toString? Because it is a method toString, okay, it has a default value of the toString. So the return value will be string, and yeah, you need to write your code. You need to have the name, and then you have to define the return, and you have the parameters if you want to deal with the parameters. Now example, I have the public and then string and toString, and it will return the value of x and y. Okay, so this is the way. So it will return the x and y. It is in the string format. How do I know that it is string format? Yes, that's right. We use the data type string. So you can try with the point main for. Okay. In the point main for, okay, there is no error. 7.2 and then 4.3, and then you want to print P1, P2, and then you want to get the distance from the origin P1. Oops, I guess this is not P1, but this is P2. Okay, please check this one. It should be P2, not P1. And then I would like to translate, and then I also do the translation to the other object, and then let's see this one. Oops, something wrong. Okay, you can see this one, point blah 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 blah, point blah 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 blah. So it indicates the memory address. You do not know what is the inside in that particular address, but it shows only the address. So what we can do is to deal with the, oops, I guess I skipped something. Do I skip something here? I need to discuss this one later. So in this case, I would like to teach you to put one more method. Here, you need to give the toString. What is the toString? So the previous example, this one. You need to add this toString in order to show the X and Y. And you put this toString into the point.java. Let's see, I'm going to run the point main for. Yes, you can see now the P has been changed into the number that you inserted. Okay. I cannot teach you all the things about object-oriented programming due to the time limitation, but yeah, now I'm jumping to the encapsulation. So it might give you a hard time to understand all the things in short time, but I'm just selecting the important part for this Java. So the encapsulation means to hide the implementation detail of an object from its client. So I don't want to show it to the client. So I just want to keep the data. I want to keep all the things only in my Java file. So the encapsulation provides abstraction and it will separate the external view behavior from the internal view. Encapsulation protects the integrity of an object's data. When you do the previous example, you always define it the public. Okay, so in the previous example, we use public. Even though there is no declaration about the public or the publicity, each of the variable, like you can see here, when you define this integer x and y, like this one, so it automatically regarded as public. Then if you have the public, yeah, you can access the data anywhere. Once you want to make it private, then when you access the data, there should be a method to access the data. So it is for the privacy issue, it is for the security issue. It is recommended that all the data members are in private. Okay. So the client code sees an error when you are accessing the private fields. Let's see. If you check on this, okay, this one is the point. Okay. Now, let me change this into the private and private. Okay, so if you see the point 2, point main, point 3, point 4, okay, if I save this one, then there are errors. What are the errors? P1 comma y equals to 2. You cannot access the y again. Why? Now the visibility is closed. So you cannot access the y after you create the data member as private. So if I change this one, okay, I change that one. Yeah, the x is fine, but the y is not fine because y is still on the private. So that's the difference between the private and public. Okay, so let me just give you the private. Okay, because it is important. It's important practice if you run your code in Java. Whenever you want to access the private, yeah, you can use the getX. If you still remember, we have the mutator and accessor. So the accessor is just want to read the data, so you can just use the get. Usually people will say set and get. So I'm going to set the get the x and then let's return the x because it is integer. If I want to change, this is the accessor, okay. If I want to mute it or I want to change the value, then you can see the set x and then there will be a value and the value will be assigned to the x. So if you have the P1 and we want to get x and get y, you can check if after you have this statement and then change to the x equal to 14, what happened? If you print the P1, then it will show you the 14. Now let's see the overall code in the version 4. So in the version 4, we have the class point. Okay, we have the two private classes, and whenever we have the private classes, private data member, then you need to give the accessor. Yes, you need to give the function to get the values. So the class diagram now has been changed. Before, you see that this is plus. Plus means public, but minus means private. Minus means private. So these two data are private. Nobody can access it. How can we access? Yeah, we are using the accessor, this one, get x, and the value integer, it will show the integer value like this. And get y, the integer, and then you will give the value of respective query. So this is one example. If you have the constructor point, you will directly define the argument. So if you want to try with your code, there is the point min 5. Okay, so it's still error because I don't have the get x. What is the get x here? Yeah, you can combine this into your code in point.java. This one like this. Okay, so when I call the get x, it will return the x. When I call the get y, it will return y. So you can see the point min 5 errors disappear. So you can use this. The result is the same with the previous one, but now we are using getX. So what is getX? When I click this one, then it goes to the method. So you use control and mouse click. Okay. So the point min 5 is what I already explained to you. So the problem now, what we are having in the encapsulation, it is the abstraction between object and client. And it will protect an object from unwanted access. So you can know that there are many phishing, or there are many I don't know what anyway. So it's that the data is very sensitive. So if you want to create your Java code, it will be recommended if your data is private. And it protects an object from unwanted access by the client. Yeah, for example, bank forbids the client to change the account balance. It allows you to change the class implementation. So if you are using X and Y for a particular city, you can also use the radius and the theta to indicate the radius and angle respectively. So it allows you to constrain object state invariant. Now let's see the example. Okay. So in this example, actually I want to see the student name and I want to give the student GPA. What is it? I have two data. The first is name and the second is GPA. And I just want to define three data. So the first data, Bob 2.5, Chloe 3.0, and David 3.1. Your program should show the best GPA, and the best GPA is David, and the average GPA is 2.86. How can we get the David? Yeah, because it shows the last one and the value is the highest among the data. So this student shows two data members, which is name and GPA. Of course, you don't want to share data. And the other are the constructor. Okay, we have the same name with the class name, so it is the constructor with two parameters. And then you have another method, get name, get GPA, set name, set GPA. Okay, so you can check the student. I already gave you this one. So the student is something like this one. Okay, student name GPA, set GPA. Now, if you are familiar with the get set, yeah, you can just put this on your student class. And as one important thing that you need to know is creating the client program. So the client program here is to access the your Java file. Oh, where is it? Oh, student main. Am I right? Oh yeah, student main. Okay, so I will check this one. Yeah. Now you can see there is a main class. If there is no main class, okay, what happened if there is no main class? So if I run, yeah, it goes to the previous Java file. Okay, because Eclipse cannot recognize that this code has an issue. So it just gives you that, yeah, the class cannot run. The problem will be on the class with no main method. Okay, so if you have this, how many students? 3. Okay, let's say A, and then 2.8, and then B, and then let's say 3.0, and then C, and then let's see, I put the 3.25. Yeah, the best student with the GPA, the best GPA is CCC. Okay, is the highest one, and the average GPA is 3.02. So you can understand the concept of average. And then you need to add more. Okay, so you already have the get name, get GPA, set name, set GPA. So those methods are the recommended one. The get, there are two. Why? Because you have two data. If you have the get function, then you need to include those one, get name, get GPA. The same with the set. Okay, set name and set GPA. I have another method which is called check GPA, and there is one parameter double, and the result will be string. So for example, yeah, excellent, general, like what you see in the left panel. Okay, so this is the result. This is the method in the student class. What is the difference between static method and instant method? So as I mentioned to you, the instance method is the method inside the class, and yeah, you can access the method from the object. But it is different with the static method. So static method can be executed without any instance. So if you don't have any instance, you can use static method as well. If you still remember the generate the characters. Okay, so the random generator of characters at a time, we make what with one function, and that function is the static method. In the static method, you can just execute your program without any instance. Okay, so you don't make any object, but you can still access. The instant method should be executed after an instance or object. So if you see the student main2, okay, what is student main2? Now you can see, yes, this is using the release. Okay, so it means the data is unlimited. You need to define how many data that you want to include here. The total is 0, the index is 0, and I is 0, and double equals to max. The same with the idea from the previous example, but we have a different things about while. In the previous example, you can just say like, yeah, I want to input 3. Then after 3 operation or after 3 iteration, it stops. But in this case, I do not want to use the 3 or something. So yeah, we just have the while true. So true means whenever it is true, you will run this. You already learn about this. Name GPA. So I want to get the input for name. I want to get the input for the GPA, and then stu.add. What is it? If you still remember, the student is an object. Okay. So whenever I create a new instance, let's make a new instance. And there are 2 parameters, which are name and GPA. How can we get the GPA? So the GPA will be added, the average GPA from all the students. So you can see this one is the GPA will be added to the total, and if the GPA is greater than the maximum, then let's make the index I, and then let's do the maximum. So the I will plus and then continue. If you're going to continue, and then you will see the input one. If the in, so it means the input equals in, there's no break. Okay? The key point here is this one. Student checks GPA. So the student is the class, and then you want to access the correct. You want to access the static method. So this is the static method. Let me just copy and paste this into the point. Where is my file? Point. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Why I use point? Student. I use the student, and then I make this one. I have one parameter, but this is static. So as I mentioned to you, the static can be accessed without giving any object. So it means everyone will do the same for that method. For example, check GPA, but yeah, it valids for everyone. So if you know the your GPA, then you can just use the method. If you know something related with you, then just use this method. You don't need to give what is the number of your object. Okay, it's not the queuing. So that's why the use of check GPA here, okay, it is from the student, and yeah, it will categorize whether the GPA is greater than 3.5 or it is less than 1. And the other thing that you need to know is using the printf. So I'm using the printf in order to calculate. So percent to f. I forgot. Did you get this kind of example? I think so. Okay. So percent to f means I want to get a number of float, and then there should be only 2 numbers after the comma. So 2 decimal number. Total divided by the stew size, and the result will be, oops. Name DDD 3.4 2.4. Okay, continue. Yes. E, and then 3.5. Yes. Y, and then 3.2. Continue? No. So if I put no, yeah, it will show the result. The best GPA is E, and then the average is 3.03. Check grade is general. General means where is it? This one. So the GPA will be checked. If it is greater than 3.5, it is excellent. If it is not, then yeah, it's not it's just general. Okay, so this is general because the average is 3.03. Okay, I guess that's all for this course, and I'm expecting you to do some practice. But before you do the practice, I think I will explain more videos in order to match with your team project timeline. Okay, so please keep update with the announcement section in your e-class, and see you on the next video.